What's up, snappers? Welcome back to the channel. DDDREWSKY here. We're going to be looking at the brand new card, Anti-Venom, to see if he's worth your precious resources. We're going to see his key synergies, counters, and some decks that I made for him. Oh wait, before we do that, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 1,000 subs of the channel. I do weekly reviews about the brand new card in Marvel Snap. So make sure you hit that notification bell. You do not want to miss out. What's up, snappers? Future Drew here. Unfortunately, Anti-Venom has been changed to a 7 powered card with the last OTA. So if I'm referencing anything with 6 power, make sure to remember that he's a 7 powered card. Now let's get back into it. So now the question is, who is Anti-Venom? Let's take a look. So Anti-Venom in Marvel Snap is a 4-cost, 6-powered card with the on-reveal ability to set the cost and power of your deck's top card to 0. He has a crazy amount of potential to create, really cool combos or certain, decks with like ongoing cards that don't really care for power. I believe this ability could be very, very good, especially if you have potentially Luke Cage. So again, I think he has a lot of potential to create a lot of havoc in the meta. All right, now let's look at some of the pros and cons about Anti-Venom. Let's take a look. So the first pro about him is that he's a great power at 4 costs. I would say 6 power on average for 4 costs is great. Another pro about him is that he gives you a free play card. So again, the top card on your deck that's 0 cost is amazing. You can use that card whenever you want. But make sure, again, if you really care about the power, you run Luke Cage. But again, a free card is amazing in Marvel Snap. Another pro about him is that he opens deck building potential. So you might bring up cards like Iron Lad, Howard the Duck, cards that aren't really used a lot, definitely could bring value to them, right? So there's a lot of different ideas and things that you could do potentially with Anti-Venom. Another pro about him is that he works well with ongoing cards. So again, like cards like Blue Marvel, Iron Man, Mystique, cards like that have like very low power, it's fine, right? If you lose that power, usually it's okay. But again, there are cards and potentially some decks that I'll show you guys that could, help you out with that power reduction. So now let's talk about the cons about him. So he is a 4-cost card. Right now, especially even with the Zabu change, 4 costs is a little bit clunky. If you run Anti-Venom, at 4, it's usually okay. You would have, 2 other turns to do other things. So I think he might be okay. So another con about him is that he sets the power to 0. So if you don't have Luke Cage, you have to be very careful about what you could potentially hit with Anti-Venom. Imagine if you hit like Giganto or a big card, that you really want to keep that power. So if you don't have power, then you can potentially hit like a really good card. So be careful of that. Another con about him is that he could be Luke Cage dependent, right? So Luke Cage reverts the power back to their cards. So like if their power got reduced, it will go back to normal with Luke Cage. But if you don't run Luke Cage, then you run that risk, right? Of that card being a 0 powered, right? The power makes a huge difference, honestly, with a lot of these cards. So another con about him is if he is a late draw, is he a dead card potentially? So again, if you draw him at like, turn 6 or turn 5, it might be pretty late. So overall, you want to play him on curve. Now let's take a look at some of the key synergies and counters for Anti-Venom. So the first synergy of Anti-Venom, just like I mentioned earlier, is Luke Cage. So again, Luke Cage will fix the power that has been, dropped down to 0. If you're worried about that power, you definitely want to run Luke Cage with Anti-Venom. For Iron Man, he's another synergy that is great with Anti-Venom. He's just an example of cards that are ongoing that have low powered. So again, like I mentioned, Mystique, even Blue Marvel, cards that don't have a lot of power that are great ongoing cards, Anti-Venom will love. Another synergy that even the community video has shown is Null. Null is a 0 powered ongoing card. Anti-Venom brings tons of value to Null, right? You can play Null for free, which is insane for the last turn in a destroy deck. So I see a massive amount of potential there. So let's talk about the counters. So Cosmo, of course, is a counter to Anti-Venom. Anti-Venom is a on reveal. So again, Cosmo is very popular right now, so be careful of Cosmo. Mobius is another huge counter against Anti-Venom, right? So if they are running Mobius, you will have trouble with it, right? Like it will cause chaos with that 0 cost card. So that will revert everything that Anti-Venom has done. Baron Mordo is another spicy pick. I know, again, he does not really play that much, but he could potentially ruin the cost reduction that you've done with Anti-Venom. All right, now let's take a look at some of the decks that I brewed. I think they're pretty fun and competitive. Let's take a look. So the first deck we have is called Anti-Toxic Venom. So overall, the goal of this deck is to afflict negative power to the opponent and reap the value of it, right? So for turn 1, you can do Silver Sable, of course. So for turn 2, you kind of want to do like Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, or Mysterio. Hawkeye is great for those arrows, and then Mysterio is great just to, you know, create those clones and afflict it with negative damage. For turn 3, you want to do either Luke Cage. You probably want to save Cosmo. It's very situational based because, again, Cosmo's a tech card. But for Luke Cage, it's probably okay to run on turn 3. Turn 4, you could do Anti-Venom, of course, to get, you know, your free cost card. And, you know, whatever you get, especially if you hit like Ajax, it should be okay. But other than that, like having Luke Cage in this deck with Anti-Venom is very important because it will revert the power, which is great. Man-Thing is great for turn 4 as well if you want to inflict, you know, negative damage. Ajax is great on curve at turn 5, or you can save him for turn 6 with Silver Sable. Sasquatch is great with Mysterio, gets the value from that. I think overall this deck has potential. This will probably be one of the first ones I try. Now let's take a look at the second list. The next list we got is called Iron-Anti-Venom. So overall, this deck is primarily focused on, you know, giving rocks to your opponent's deck and then generating power for your own hand and deck. So we have Fast, Kitty Pryde, Korg on turns 1. So for on turn 2, you usually want to do either Athena, Hawkeye, or Agent Venom. Primarily, you would probably want to do Agent Venom as soon as possible. So for turn 2, he's probably a priority. And then if you want, you could do Hawkeye, Kate Bishop to generate arrows for Athena. So that would probably be the priority level. So it'd be Agent Venom, Hawkeye, and then Athena. So for turn 3, you probably want to save Mystique for Iron Man or Darkhawk. For Cosmo, again, very situational based. If you want to counter, you know, one of their cards or protect your own card, actually. So for turn 4, you want to do Anti-Venom on curve, and then Rock Slide is a support card for Darkhawk. For turn 5, you could either do Iron Man or Darkhawk. Probably want to save those two maybe as a surprise. So again, depending on the hand and situation, but on curve, it should be okay. And then for turn 6, you could either do, you know, Kitty Pryde or Darkhawk or any of the arrows with Darkhawk or Iron Man. It's up to you on, again, your hand and the situation. So now let's take a look at the third and final list. So this list is called Mr. Anti-Venom. So the overall goal of this deck is pretty much a Mr. Negative deck. So you want to flip the cost and power of this deck. So for turn 1, of course, you can't really play anything. For turn 2, you want to run either Psylocke or Ravonna to cheat out some energy for Mr. Negative. That's the primary goal. If your hand is pretty bad, then you could use on turn 3 Magic. You want to save Mystique and Sage probably for the later turns. Those are great. Mystique is great with Iron Man or even Null. Sage is a great finisher on turn, you know, 5 or 6. But usually you want to use Magic if you have a really bad hand with Mr. Negative. Anti-Venom, you do want to play on curve usually. Of course, if you have Mr. Negative, you probably want to avoid running Mr. Negative if you have Anti-Venom in your deck, because again, Anti-Venom will turn into a 6/4, which is not ideal. But yeah, the Anti-Venom just basically gives you a free cost like Iron Man or Null. Those are usually the hits that you want to hit, or even Mystique. Black Panther is great on turn 5. Zola. Jane is great just to get all your 0 cost cards after you run Mr. Negative. She is amazing in this deck. So overall, again, it really depends on your hand and situation with the Mr. Negative deck. You want to make sure to utilize getting, you know, Mr. Negative out early, and then either getting all your 0 cost cards with Jane, or cheating out, you know, some of the ongoing cards with Anti-Venom. So again, there's a lot of different combinations with this deck, and I see a lot of potential with it. All right, now let's take a look at the spotlights that are featured with Anti-Venom. Let's take a look. So Anti-Venom is with Super Giant and Ghost Spider. So Super Giant is a Series 5, Ghost Spider is a Series 4, and Anti-Venom is a Series 5 card. Right now in the current meta, I would say Super Giant is definitely a pass. She has a very cool and unique ability. Don't get me wrong, I love her, but unfortunately, she's just not played that much. She's not really meta relevant, so I would say she's definitely a pass. For Ghost Spider, she is a staple in a lot of move decks, so I would say actually go and get her. I know in the past I mentioned that she's probably a pass, but I would say right now, especially how strong move is, Ghost Spider is definitely a must-have if you do not have her. So for the spotlight variants of the week, Anti-Venom looks amazing. Pandar is great. Super Giant, I would say it's a pass. Again, art is subjective. I'm not really a huge fan of it. And then Ghost Spider variant, I think it's actually pretty cool. I love it that she's upside down, then drinking water, or whatever drink she's drinking is, you know, upside down. So I would say the Anti-Venom variant and Ghost Spider variants are pretty good. So definitely, you know, snap on those. And then the Super Giant variant, definitely passable. Now let's take a look at the star ratings I gave for Anti-Venom. So for competitive, I gave him a 3 out of 5 stars. I think he'll be pretty good, but there are a lot of things with like draw or even luck, right? If you're not running Howard, you can't see what's on the top of your deck, so you're definitely running a gamble. For fun, I would say 3.5 stars. Again, if you get a 0 cost, like really huge value card, then of course that's going to bring a lot of joy and fun to you. But if you don't, then it could ruin your fun with the card, right? For flexibility, I gave him a 3 out of 5 stars. I think he has potential. But again, you know, there's only 3 decks that I've shown, but there could be potential with him in other decks as well. For future changes, I would say 2 stars. I think his ability and power is pretty good for what he does. So I don't really see a lot of changes with him unless he's like completely busted, but I think he's okay. I think he's going to be definitely safe to get. All right, now let's take a look at my final review of Anti-Venom. Let's see if he's a snap or skip. Let's take a look. So I say skip on Anti-Venom. I think he's a little bit too niche, personally. I think his ability is really cool and all, but I think that he requires a lot of luck, honestly. Again, if you're not running Howard the Duck, if you're not running a deck that's filled with ongoing cards, then I could see a lot of pitfalls with this card. So personally, I don't think he's a must-have. It's very niche. Again, it could be very fun, a very cool, clippable, and very content creation card. But overall, I would say if you are a casual Marvel Snap gamer, I would say he's definitely a skip. So let me know your thoughts about Anti-Venom. If there's any cool synergies or decks that I missed out on, and make sure if you haven't yet, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 1,000 subs of the channel. I would love for you to be a part of it, and I'll see you guys on the next Snapper Skip. Happy snapping.